Let me get started. Right. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today is a Comprehensivist Wednesdays that we do in collaboration with the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. I am delighted to have Mike back, and I'm especially delighted to have his guest, Rusa, here. So Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Shrikant. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out again. Great Golatiani.
Hola, Mike.
Ragorahar.
Gargan.
Anyway, I invited Rusa here tonight because I had done some meetups in the past about chess specifically, but the main reason that we're here is that we are comprehensivists. We're learners who think polymathically, we think along a broad spectrum, and throughout all of these meetups at 52 Living Ideas, there are a lot of common threads. One real one for me is the idea of learning with emotion. And you learn that way by life experience. So rather than talk about Rusa's chess history, which is quite extensive, I'll give it to you in combination with some other things that she's done and really give you an idea of why she's sitting next to me tonight. So this is a real delight for me. So Rusa has transferred her life and her career through 3 different cultures. Born in Georgia, speaks Georgian, speaks Russian, speaks English, was a phenomenal scholastic chess player, has 3 gold World Youth Championships to her name, lived in Russia for a while, won tournaments there, came to the United States, won the US championship in 2005, but along the way, pulled from the Georgian culture, from Russian culture, and here living in New York, became a mom, transferred from playing chess at a very high level, the highest level, and then became a teacher, which is a very hard thing to do. So you become a player at a top level and you become a teacher. Now all that information that you have up here, you need to distill. You need to bring it down for the student. And then you become a mom and everything that goes along with that. And then she becomes a student again, because unlike me, who worked in finance and on Wall Street and transferred to chess, Rusa did the opposite. She decided to leave the chess world, became a student, went to community college, struggled, got into and graduated from Columbia, and is now on a trading desk, trading FX. Put it all together, I have the perfect conversation companion to talk about what we do here at 52 Living Ideas. Rusadan.
Готов, Mike?
Yeah, Yakatov. I want to start off talking about technical chess, because in the introduction that I wrote by hand, I talked about 2 scenarios as a chess player. One is 30 seconds before you stop the clock or your opponent stops the clock, knowing you are about to win the game. At the highest level, you're playing in the US Championship, you are 30 seconds away from winning the game. I want you to talk about what that feels like physically. And then I would like you to flip the coin and talk about playing at the highest stage, the 30 seconds right before you stop the clock to resign. Could you share a little bit about that roller coaster of emotion?
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, chess has been my life for quite a long time. I learned to play when I was 6. And growing up, I didn't really go to school. So I completely devoted my life to chess, which meant every game, every win or every loss was at a high stake. And it really meant a lot to me. And playing big tournaments like the one that you brought up, US Championship, I just remember not only 32 seconds before the game is over, but even going into that last round, you know, the emotions that you go through, it's very hard to describe, to be honest with you. Like, you know, I can remember the night before the night before I became US Women's Champion, I couldn't sleep the round before, right? I knew that I had to play this girl for a playoff, and if I won, I would become a US Women's Champion. I was so emotionally charged that I had trouble going to sleep. On the other hand, I knew that I had to get some sleep to play well. So I'll never forget this because, I went to bed pretty early, and around 11 o'clock, and then 12, 1, 2, 3. And it was about 4 o'clock when I called my husband. He was in New York. I was playing in San Diego, and I burst in tears, crying my eyes out. And I said to him, tomorrow is the most important game of my chess career, and I just can't fall asleep because my brain wouldn't shut off. I was just thinking and calculating and preparing in my head. But somehow, I was able to pull my strength together because I really wanted to win that game. And as you mentioned, like the few seconds before your opponent resigns, you realize, you won the game or you won the big tournament. It's probably the best experience that a chess player can feel. And for me, definitely one of the best moments of my life. Of course, I have children, and, having my children are definitely the best thing that ever happened to me. But, besides that, I think winning big chess tournaments and important games in my life was really the highlight that I'll never forget. And the complete opposite when you lose. I remember, Mike and I, we used to work together for many years. And I remember every time I would lose, I would actually call you and say, I don't really know why I played this game. It's terrible. I need to stop. I need to quit. I hate this game. Why am I doing this to myself? Because you feel so miserable. You feel like, your life is meaningless, especially if you lose at one game. It's the pain that is very hard to describe. It's not right. It's not something that hurts and bleeds physically, but inside emotionally, you are just a nerve wrack, and it's really difficult to lose games, especially the won ones.
Right.
And also, yeah.
No. So what's interesting about that is it's the length of that swing of emotion, right? So when you win a chess game and you're standing up and you're looking at the squares, you're looking at a world that has invited you in, and you feel like it's part of you, right? It's in your blood as a chess player. And the opposite is true when you lose. It becomes a cold, dark place, to the point that when you go home, you don't want to look at the chessboard. I remember having those conversations with you and other chess players, but you particularly, that you're playing a game at a high level, and the day before we have had a conversation after you've won. And then it's sometimes you say to yourself, am I talking to the same person? So it's an amazing psychological swing that happens to us. There's another thing I wanted to talk to you about and expand a little bit on, is when you mention the feeling inside. Chess players, we burn a lot of calories when we play chess. There is the science that goes on about, somebody who is in this position looks to be kind of lazy and not doing much movement. But on the inside, there's a furnace burning. But I think we have a problem as chess players in that, unlike athletes or singers or dancers, we can't use our emotion. We can't talk out loud. If I'm a baseball player, I can swing a bat warming up before it's my turn to hit. Correct? If I'm in an acting scene, I can talk out loud and use my body. What do we do as chess players? We have incredible emotion. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, you've even had players, if I recall, kicking you under the table, or the table actually rocking because of that fuel.
Oh, absolutely. As you mentioned, I think it's very hard for chess players. And it's hard for me to talk about other chess players, but I suffered great anxiety from it. It's because, you're sitting there for 6 hours and you're not able to release that energy or, butterflies that you have in your stomach. And I always did, even as a kid, I remember playing one of the World Youth Championships. When I finished, I won the game. One of my friends told me, why do you play chess? I don't think you should play this game. And I said, why? He said, like your whole body was shaking. He said, I couldn't watch you. It was crazy. I felt so bad for you. And I said, oh, really? I didn't even realize at the moment. But then looking back, I wish I had maybe different kind of support. I think chess players more than anybody needs mental support. That's why like at a higher level, like nowadays especially, they have psychologists and people like maybe help them with yoga and relaxation techniques, which is very important. But back in the day when I was growing up, nobody really talked about it. Nobody talked about how to release that energy, which often turned into anxiety. Hence that's why I couldn't sleep very often, and was just really hard. But I guess the happiness you would get from winning games would scratch all the pain and all the anxiety that you would feel during the game, and it made it totally worth it. And I remember you told me actually once that you can't play chess unless you're nervous.
Correct.
And we are nervous because we really care. We are nervous because we really want to do well, and we really want to win. And I guess it's part of the game. Yeah, I mean, for me, I had some tricks, I guess. I would listen to music before the game. And if I won the game, that was greatest happiness. If I lost the game, yeah, I cried quite often as a kid and even as an adult, believe it or not. And I guess that was the way of releasing my negative energy. But I agree with you that it's an extremely complex game. And I really hope that chess players or young chess players nowadays get more support from their parents and coaches, so they don't have to go through some of the hurdles that I went through when I was a kid.
Right. So you mentioned in that answer that it's very routine to sit down and play. Like a classically timed chess game can last 6 hours. And when you're playing those 6 hours, I remember losing a game at the World Open where I was the last to finish. And I had no idea that I was the only one left in the room. I had a slightly worse position, got slightly better. So the emotion took over for me. And I thought I was winning when I wasn't really. And I ended up losing the game. And when I looked up, I was completely surrounded by a group of chess players watching me. And I just realized that I had gone somewhere else, right, for 6 hours. So when you talk about playing 6 hours, I want to kind of move now into another meetup that we did here on Wednesday nights, and it was about thought and action fragmentation. Basically, what technology is doing to us in terms of how it's taking the time for us to make a decision and shortening that. So, for example, as chess players, if we play a 2-minute game online, we're clicking the mouse every 2 seconds, correct? When you were a kid, you were not using a computer to study chess. As a matter of fact, in Georgia, and this is a big part of the conversation, was in the early 90s, you were living through a civil war, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were studying chess how?
So yes, there were no computers, or if there were computers, we didn't have any. So it was mainly, over the chessboard. And I was fortunate enough to have a coach who really was very good. I had him only for several years, but I think he is one of the main reasons why I became a chess player. He would really train me. So one of the things he would do is he would put TV on and have me do chess puzzles on the board. And when I would complain, well, TV distracts me, he said, well, it's too bad, because when you play chess tournaments, it will never be perfectly quiet. You will need to learn how to concentrate with noise around you. And I did. I did a lot of puzzles while TV was going. And training like that really helped me, because I remember playing one of the US Women's Championship in San Diego. We were actually playing near the airport. And I remember like every minute or two, like, you would hear planes land or take off, and it made a lot of noise. It didn't bother me at all. The reason why I know about this is because a lot of chess players complained that, it was not a good venue for a chess tournament. But I think because I was trained by my coach, actually a friend of mine recently made fun of me. She joked, she said, oh, you silly, you really believe that he was training you? He was probably just watching TV. maybe that was the case, but it actually did help me a great deal. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, Mike, I think computers can definitely hurt your game. And I told this to my students many times, because when you play online, it really doesn't matter as much, right? Your online rating doesn't count as much, or if you play a 3-minute game or 5-minute game, you're not able to concentrate as much, right? And then unfortunately, we live in a time where we love to multitask, which is really bad. And you can't do that playing a real 6-hour chess game, because as we all know, it only takes one bad move to lose a game. And, you know, during 6 hours, if you lose your concentration, even for a minute, and you make a bad move, that's it. Your 6 hours of work, really hard work, is thrown away, and you cannot afford that, right? So that's why often when we play, you know, we don't realize there are people in the room, right? Because we completely get into this world of chess, and that world is our real world during 6 hours, right? But nowadays, because we are distracted by technology, I think it's very hard to do, and online chess doesn't really help. So that's why I tell students often, you know, unless you can really push yourself and concentrate when you play online, then just don't do it, because if you play at a half capacity, it's going to hurt your game more than it will help. And then going back to the question you asked, you know, yes, I did actually grow up in a small city. Unfortunately, there was a war there. And one day we had to leave. We had to become refugees. So I remember it like yesterday. You know, it was I was about 13 years old, and my dad said, "You have to pack quickly whatever you can, and we need to leave the town immediately." And I remember the only thing I packed was my chess notebook, because as I mentioned, chess was my life. You know, school was secondary. You know, I missed a lot of school. So chess was my primary occupation. So I packed my chess notebook, and that was the only thing I took with me. And we went to the capital, and we never went back. So we basically lost everything we ever owned, right? And here we are in a new town. My dad lost his job. You know, we had relatives let us live in their small apartment for a little time until my dad got a job. He was a university professor. But, you know, times were really hard, you know, to the extent where, you know, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have heat or hot water. And I remember studying chess under a candlelight for hours. You know, that's how I studied. And I really am, I'm very thankful to chess. Like when people talk about chess, even though I haven't been playing chess for a few years now, chess is part of me, and it will always be. You know, it's not something that, you know, anyone can ever separate, because I think because of chess, I got through a lot of hardships in my life. And one of them being, you know, losing my house and, you know, going through a war in my hometown. And also, you know, this is how I ended up in the US, and that's how I got into Colombia. And I'm sure it has helped me to get to my new job as well.
Do you think some of that made you stronger as a player, kind of creating grit and resilience for you? I mean, how can it not, right? I mean, you live through that, because chess, especially when a position is tense, right? There's no clear advantage either way, and you're trying to hold the position. It takes a lot of grit to do that. And I think when you're young and you kind of grow up, and you and I both lost parents at a very similar age. Your mom tragically, my dad, my first day of high school. And I think that hardship was one of the reasons that I thought we taught well together. So I want to pull the conversation from the technical chess into the teaching aspect for a moment, because as teachers, I always felt like we had a connection with the students, primarily kids, right? But part of that connection was born from tragedy, from trauma, losing a parent. And I think it made, I had mentioned in another meetup, that it kind of pushed me into learning to converse with people. Do you think, as sad as it was looking back, that it kind of even helped you as a teacher?
That's a good question. I'm sure it has helped me to connect with kids, especially. Yes, as you mentioned, like not only I lost my mom tragically, but you know, I also lost her going from a chess tournament. So basically, she came to visit me at a chess tournament, and she was a big supporter of my chess. Both my parents were. Actually, when I was studying chess as a little girl, my parents would walk on tippy toes. You know, I remember Kasparov once said that in order to become a good chess player, you'll have to have a dedicated parent or dedicated coach. You know, I was fortunate enough to have both. But when I talk about my parents, they were completely dedicated to my chess. My mom would always travel to tournaments with me. She would leave my sister behind. My sister was not happy about it, but you know, like they were really supporting my chess. And when I studied, you know, everybody whispered, you know, they wouldn't talk loud because they didn't want to distract me. And my mom brought me to a chess tournament once, and on the way back, she got into a car accident and she died. It was a very sad event. Of course, I was only 12. It was completely devastating. And I remember my dad saying that, I could stop playing chess if I wanted to, because it was very hard for me to keep playing after my mom died. But I said, no, I'm going to continue playing because I know that my mom wanted me to play chess and she was a big supporter. And also, as I mentioned before, like chess really helped me to ease the pain in a way, because when I played chess, I got into this game and it opened up a new world for me. And it was a world where I could forget about Civil War. I could forget about the fact that I didn't have my mom next to me anymore, or I didn't have all the belongings that I had before, right? And just completely devote myself to this game. Did it help me as a chess teacher? I think so. Like, I think it made me stronger. It also made me, realize many things at a very early age. And I just, also, I think I always loved kids, but, it kind of, made me connect with kids easily somehow, because kids are always very genuine. I found that, from a very early age. I love kids because they're very open. They always tell you what they think. And I think it has helped me when I teach chess.
Great, great. Yeah, we were talking about that the other night here in a meetup in the Tao Te Ching. So one of the verses ended with that, like almost kind of giving you the advice to be like a child at the end of it, which leads me to another teaching. Sometimes it's a problem for us when we're teaching kids who are talented and the parents and the students don't always align, where you will either have a parent who is too coddling, where you have a student who is just not doing any homework at all, is not trying over the board, they're not concentrating, and the parents are just saying everything is fine, it's okay. You've lost your queen 10 times in a row, but you made the other kids feel good. That's kind of on this side. And then we have run into quite a few parents who are extremely strict with the players. Now, for kids to get to a very high level, as you know, because you did it yourself, it takes an enormous amount of work. But I have found sometimes where I'm conflicted as a teacher when I see there isn't alignment, because to me, I see it more like a triangle. I see the coach, the student, and the parent, and that triangle has to flow correctly. It has to be in balance. If the ego gets in the way of the coach, right? We've been through this too, where a chess teacher has a talented student and they know that they're supposed to give the student away because they've progressed, but we don't. You can have a parent who is overbearing. There's no other better word to describe it, right? They're just overbearing, or they're just not pushing the kid at all. And then, of course, there's so much room with the kid. What is your take overall about our responsibility as teachers? Because I think we have a big impact on them. That connection in chess, I think it's pretty important.
I completely agree with you. And as you mentioned, Mike, I think it's important to have a balance. I mean, I grew up with a tiger dad. There is no question about that. He was very supportive, but at the same time, he expected me to do well. So there was some kind of a pride that, I was tough, I was studying hard and I had to do well, so when I would go to a tournament, I knew that my dad expected me to do well and be the best. I joke about this now sometimes because when I first came to the US, actually, it was a long time ago. It was in 1990. And it was back then, it was Soviet Union. So going to outside of Soviet Union and traveling to the US was a huge deal. And I remember I won Soviet Union Championship under 12, and that qualified me to play World Junior Championship under 12 in Wisconsin. But my parents couldn't come with me because they're not allowed to get visa, right? They couldn't travel. So they were debating whether or not let me go with the Russian delegation because I didn't really know anybody, right? But they finally decided that, it was okay for me to go because I really wanted to go and I really wanted to play. And I'll never forget, I tied for third place. So third and fourth. On tie breaks, I got fourth. But, I remember thinking to myself, I'm number 4 girl under 12 in chess in the world, thinking, that's not a bad result. And this was a very first World Youth Championship for me. But I'll never forget when I got to the airport coming back, my dad greeted me, he hugged me, and he said, "It's okay, sweetheart, you'll do better next time." So to
Wow.
him, it was a failure, and I'll
Wow.
never forget that, you know. So I don't know if it was good or bad at the moment. You know, I guess it hurt. Did it push me to do better next time? I guess in some sense it did. But you know, at times I feel like maybe it was a little too much, but it's hard to say, right? I mean, it's hard to say if he was different. If he thought, you know, fourth place was a great result, you know, would I have won, you know, the next one, right? Nobody knows. It's hard to talk about that. But I also had a university professor once who said, well, if you're not first, don't worry. You know, if you come in second, don't worry, you're first among losers. So that's how, you know, my dad was. That was his approach.
Yeah. You know, in the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, at the beginning when they realized that Josh Waitzkin can play, and I want to talk a little bit about Josh Waitzkin too. You know him, right? You're the same age.
Yes, yeah, we've played some tournaments.
Movie, when the parents realize that he can play, he sits down with his father, and the first game he basically loses on purpose. He did not want to beat his own father. And then, you know, it's Hollywood, but they, you know, Joe Mantegna, the actor, says, "Come on, Josh, I want you to do your best." And Waitzkin drops the phone book on the floor, puts his elbows on the table, and now it's on. And he beats his dad. So I want to ask you, because it was your dad who first exposed you to chess. At some point, he had to realize that you had serious talent. What was it like the first time that you beat your father? Did you have the feeling of, oh man, I'm beating my dad? Or did you put your elbows on the table?
No, I definitely did not have that feeling. You know, I was super excited. You know, I put my elbows down and I was ready. I couldn't wait to beat my dad. That was my first big goal, I think. But I'll never forget how my dad felt about this, because, you know, my dad's a pretty accomplished guy. You know, he's written several books. And for him to lose, I think I was about 9 or 10, to lose to a 9-year-old girl was really hard to get over, right? So he kept asking me to play and play and play over again until he realized, you know, it didn't make sense for him to play against me anymore. But that was the greatest feeling, right? But, you know, back to what you said, you know, I think talent is definitely, talent was there, you know, like I heard it from the beginning that, you know, she's talented, she has what it takes. You know, I did hear that growing up. But I also want to mention that hard work makes a big difference, because for some time, I didn't really study as much, right? You know, I think talent can bring you pretty far when you're a beginner, right? You know, you learn pretty quickly and you don't have to really work that hard to get ahead. But then at some point, you know, when you start getting pretty good, you know, reach a certain level, then you have to start putting more work. And I'll never forget, you know, I had some friends that I used to beat all the time. And, you know, I heard parents talk and say, oh, you know, like, you know, maybe Rusa's more talented, you know, she beats them all the time. And then I realized at some point they started to beat me. And then it turned out that, oh, you know what, they're studying chess 6 hours a day. And how many hours am I studying? Oh, I'm only studying 1 or 2, right? So you know, I realized that at some point, people that were working hard and a lot more than me started to become better than I was. So the talent can only bring you that far, right? So I think hard work is what really is needed to push you forward at some point.
Correct. So I want to talk about what we developed as teachers, and we didn't do it on purpose. I remember writing on a whiteboard at the WCA. We had our own little school for a while. We wrote on the whiteboard in marker. And I also remember one of the moms charging into the room and erasing the ink because she thought it was toxic. And I thought something had exploded. You remember that story, right? So, but we had written down characteristics or ideas or paths to chess improvement. And we ended up leaving 3 on the board. And they all ironically began with the letter C. We didn't plan it. It's just how it ended up. And I know we have a couple of students here tonight, and those 3 were concentration, calculation, and confidence. So we've already talked a little bit about concentration and how it connected here with these meetups. We spent a lot of time talking about how our thoughts get broken down. It's so hard to concentrate. I'm going to save confidence for last because I have I really want to take this conversation in a certain direction last. But in the middle is calculation. So I'm not 100% sure that calculation on the chessboard is a transferable skill, although your ability to visualize things in your head in the business world or as an actor or as a musician is very, very important in order to calculate. But on the chessboard, you had something unique that most title players I know have. You have visualization of the chessboard in your head. And there are some people here who are into neuroscience and fascinated with how the brain works. And I know you're a fan of, is it Jim Quick, who wrote the book Limitless?
Yes.
And so you have perfect vision of the chessboard in your head. And I've seen you play 5 games blindfold. And I've seen other players do that, but it is still a significant skill. But what I'm more interested in is, where do you go if I were to give you a chess position in your head? And I told in the last meetup a story of you finding a move blindfold in a game that I couldn't find the night before, that a computer found and you found it blindfold. So here's the question. In terms of calculation, where do you go, or how could you describe what it is that you see if you see, in fact, a perfect chessboard? Because what I see is a woman like this staring down at a board. But what is it that you see?
Yeah, and I think it's also a skill that I have learned. You know, it's not something that you can just, it's like learning a language, right? Like if I decide to learn a new language right now, you know, I probably will struggle, right? But, you know, doing puzzles blindfolded in my head, right? This is something that I grew up with, right? So my coach would constantly give me the position and have me visualize it in my head. And then I would start, you know, solving these puzzles without a book or without a chessboard. You know, then I would play my coach blindfolded without a chessboard, right? So then you realize that, you know, you start seeing the board, you start seeing the pieces. And I think it really, you know, mostly is pattern recognition, to be honest with you. And it's a result of a hard work. You know, you start to recognize patterns because I remember when I used to play kids at Chess Academy, out of 5 kids, actually I played 6 boards. You know, out of 6 boards, I remember I had trouble, the most trouble with the beginner, the most, right? Because the beginner's moves were more scattered. You know, they didn't really make sense to me, right? It was very hard to create a pattern in my head. So I had to think and concentrate a lot harder against the beginner than, you know, with better chess players, right? So I think a lot of it is pattern recognition. And, you know, I think we've talked about the Susan Polgar experiment that they did, right? Like they, they have a car go by, or like a truck go by with a chess position, and then they ask Susan to put the position on the board, and she does it without any problems because she caught the pattern. Then the bus comes around again. Now pieces are all over very randomly, right? And she couldn't put it together at all. Right. So it does go, it does, you know, go back to the pattern recognition, but also, like, you know, you asked me, how are these skills transferable? You know, I think skills, I mean, only because I play chess, you know, I'm not good at math or, you know, other things, right? But I think the work ethic, right, and concentration part is definitely transferable. And I remember when I graduated from Westchester Community College, which actually, I'm going to correct you, I didn't struggle at Westchester Community College, but I struggled at Columbia. I'll never forget when I walked into a calculus class. I came out crying because I couldn't understand anything, like anything. And, you know, I was finance and economics major. And I remember calling my dad and saying, Dad, I'm not going to be able to graduate from this school, or I'll have to change the major because I have no idea what's going on in this math class. And my dad and I, we sat down through Skype lessons every day, and we started to, you know, learn. And I was able to, you know, finish calculus 1 and 3 and graduate from Columbia University. It's another question how much I remember, not much, but my dad still jokes with me. He says, you haven't studied math after 5th grade. I have no idea how you pass. Yeah, I have no idea how you passed calculus and graduated from Columbia, you know. And that's when I talk about transferring the skills from chess. You know, it's not really necessarily the skills, but, you know, ability to concentrate and devote yourself to something that's complex and spend a lot of time thinking and studying it. I think that's what's transferable.
Okay. So I had, so here being at its Comprehensivist Wednesday, in the last meetup that we had, I talked about a benefit I got from conversations analyzing student games with the parents, because very often you would have parents observing our analysis with the kid. They're obviously vested in what's happening on the board, but they would hear us make comparisons to chess, to music, to all the things that we do as analysts. And then the kids would leave the board, go back to the tournament hall for their next round, and the conversation would continue. But instead of me having the conversation with their kid, I'm talking to a parent who does everything, which leads the conversation to a very important point where I want to talk about some of the social and cultural benefits that we're exposed to as both chess players and chess teachers. So the conversations that I've met or I've had have been very, very rich, but I've had those discussions with people from all over the world. You have been all over the world. I've only played a couple of international tournaments, but you've played many. Would you share a little bit about the value of just how easy it is? Well, it's easy for me. It might not be for you, but to communicate with people over the chessboard, like it brings us together. How does it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it connects you to the person you're playing. And even though, you know, at the moment during the game, you know, you almost feel like that person doesn't exist, or you just want to, you know, beat them and you don't really care about them. But, you know, after the game, they become your friend because you have just created something together, right? You know, you can think of it as a piece of art. You know, some people say, oh, you know, chess is art. And I completely agree with it because, you know, you don't really play two games that are exactly the same. Every time you play, it's a unique game and you create something. And especially if you create something beautiful, right? If you, let's say, sacrifice a piece and end up with a beautiful checkmate, you know, to that point, it doesn't really matter if you are the one creating or your opponent, because, you know, you are part of it, right? And through that experience, you know, you connect to your opponent. And that's one thing that I loved about being a chess player and traveling the world. You know, I have made so many friends. As a matter of fact, I actually met somebody a couple of days ago at Children's Nationals in Florida, who I played against in 1992 in Germany. She's from Venezuela. And she actually sent me a picture of us playing each other when I was 12 in Germany. And she told me that, you know, I was so good. Every time she had to play against me, her coach would spend extra time preparing her against me, but I beat her anyways, you know. And we met up after like 29 years of not seeing each other. It was great. So that's what chess does. Like, you know, it doesn't matter how many years go after you played someone. You know, chess game has connected me to people in beautiful ways. And, you know, whenever I see them, you know, it's like those years haven't even gone by without, you know, with me not seeing this person. We're still there and, you know, we still talk chess and we still enjoy the game.
Excellent. A great answer. So another thing that we talk about here a lot is the value, and I mentioned this at the very beginning, the value of having genuine emotion in a conversation. So one thing I've learned here at 52 Living Ideas, so I'm a student here. I think I've started coming in April, and Shrikant has been extremely nice in giving me time to present, which is such a great experience, because what I learned very quickly is that you only need to be part of a conversation. You don't need to lead it. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be, you just need to kind of come in, find your place, and then start learning how to put depth in conversation. And I found that chess over the years has really, really helped me take these conversations and bring them to a deeper level, right? So that leads me to, for example, I was thinking of, I had played in Curacao Do you remember Saraí Sanchez, also from Venezuela? I remember losing a game to Saraí where she was a much stronger player and I was completely lost most of the game. I fought back and got to a position where I had a theoretical king and pawn ending that was drawn, and I actually played most of it correctly, and then made a beginner's mistake when I was like, wow, I'm done. You know that feeling as a player? It's like, oh, the hard work is done, and you're one step away from falling off the cliff, which I did, and I lost the game. And I remember looking up and seeing all these players. But the point in all this is the power of emotion. Like that story, I'm just telling it now like it happened yesterday. Right? So as someone who's interested in learning about lots of other things, where does your personal emotion fit into who you are? You know, is that how you learn? Is that how, like, what really makes you move emotionally?
I mean, you know that we both, I think that's why we are here. You know, we love learning, right? And as you mentioned, like, you know, I have tried different things, and I don't know if people know that you speak 7 languages, but you know, we so how many?
6.
Oh, 6. I'm sorry. I love learning, right? And I think learning brings joy. That's why I have challenged myself to move to this country, and that's why I love this country. And I tell everyone, you know, what I love the most about this country, that it's never late to learn. Because I come from a country where, you know, if you don't have a degree by 25, you're too old to go to school, and so on and so forth. Whereas here, you know, it's never late to change your career. I mean, I changed my career when I was 35, and I'll never forget, like I right out of Columbia, I joined finance, and I was the only 35-year-old with all the 21-year-olds, and it was challenging. You know, it was extremely challenging. I remember one of the ladies I worked for, you know, she called me into her office one day, and she told me I was not great at what I was doing, and she asked me to make some, you know, PowerPoints and presentations, and I've never had experience making, you know, PowerPoints and presentations, you know, versus my peers who, you know, they grew up doing it, right? They were all like 21-year-old kids. So I remember, you know, crying in the bathroom, being upset and thinking, okay, you know, should I just, you know, quit this and go back to teaching chess, go back to what I know well and what I feel comfortable with, right? But I think unless we come out of our comfort zone, and unless we challenge ourselves, you know, do something new, something different, something we are not good at, you know, then it's very hard to grow. And I feel like I'm doing it every day. Like, you know, I'm now at a, you know, foreign exchange desk. I have a lot to learn. You know, I have no idea how options trading works, and this is something that I'm learning now, and it's very challenging. You know, I don't have a major, you know, math background, as I've already mentioned, but I'm learning step by step. And I think what brings me joy, and the reason I do it, is because, you know, when I do end up learning, right? Maybe it's not to the extent that, you know, I'm the best at it, right? But it brings me joy. You know, like same with running. I love running, right? You know, like the feeling I get after I do a run, which is sometimes is extremely hard to run, and it's very challenging. But, you know, I like the feeling of the final point, right? You feel accomplished. You know, you feel success. You feel like you succeed, right? When you know, achieve your goal. And I think we had this conversation with you, Mike. You know, what a success means to me or to you. Like in my mind, if you have a goal, it doesn't matter how small or big, right? And, you know, if my goal is to run 5K and I'm able to achieve that goal, I think that's success to me, right? And it's especially when it's something that I'm not comfortable with, something that, you know, challenges me and pushes me forward. So when I moved to this country, for example, I didn't speak English. Actually, I grew up speaking Georgian Russian, and I studied German in school. You know, not that I went to school a lot, but, you know, whatever I knew, it was in German, not in English. So I remember moving to this country with $100 in my pocket. That's all that belonged to me. And, you know, luckily I had my friend's mom who let me stay with her. And I know some of you have heard this story, but I'll repeat it again. I was working as a babysitter because I love kids. And one day chess coach comes in and starts playing chess with one of the kids that I babysat, and my eyes lit up, and I was already an accomplished chess player, although my English was not very good. And I told the guy I wanted to challenge him, and he said, okay, I can play you after the game, probably wondering, why is this babysitter bothering his lesson? So at the end, when I played him, I beat him really quickly. And he was really surprised. Then he turned the board, he took the white pieces, we played again, and I beat him again. And he told me, oh, what are you doing here? You should be teaching chess. And he's the one who got me, right, Ellen Abrams.
That is a perfect introduction to how I kind of want to wrap things up tonight, because now I want to take us out of our comfort zone. And I want to throw a couple of statistics at you and talk about that last thing, or last C, which is confidence. So I know you spent this weekend with your kids at a national tournament down in Florida, and you were asked to give a lecture to an audience of girls about confidence. Primarily, that was, and I've seen you give those kind of lectures, right? So here are some statistics. In chess history, has there ever been more than one woman in the top 100? I know right now it's Ho Yufan from China is in the top 100. And then prior to that, it was Judith Polgar. And I know Vera Menchik back maybe in the 20s would have been in the top 100. But there's only one out of the top 100. I did some statistics. So about the rating difference. So FIDE is the international rating system in chess. So you talk about a male and female divisions, what they have in chess, right? So some people it's difficult to talk about, but for chess players, we tend to just say, look, this is where it's at, right? So the top 10 players in the world who happen to be all male, the average rating is 2788. Which is enormous. The top 10 female is 2562. So if you talk about a 200-point rating gap, FIDE, that's enormous. So I just looked at these statistics today. Then I looked in the United States at the top 10-year-olds, because I wanted to have a little feel for where the kids are here in the States. The average rating of the female 10-year-olds is 1487 from number 1 to 10. The male, 1983. That's almost 500-point difference. What do you think? I mean, we could talk forever about this. Is a big topic, and one I think that maybe the breakout room would love to participate in. But the basic question is, you went down and talked about confidence with the girls. Give me a little feedback about the numbers I just gave you, and in general, what's it like you talking confidence to the female audience?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a subject that really greatly interests me, not only as a chess player, but also a chess teacher and a parent, because I see the difference in confidence, and I think it's a big issue. So what do I mean by that is, girls definitely lack confidence. And I think it's not only in chess, it's a broader topic, because I mean, there's some research is done about how, women in finance, for example, right, or other male dominated fields, you don't have too many women. And even when you do, they don't really promote themselves and push themselves forward, because they always doubt themselves, right? As an example, I'm sure you have heard of this research, when a female applies for a job, they want to make sure they qualify for all the requirements, versus men, as long as they can do half of it, they feel like they're qualified and they can learn the rest, right? And there's some other research is done about how girls actually overwork themselves during school years. And I see it clearly with my children. So the research talks about girls spending a little bit too much time on homework, right? And always trying to, push themselves to the limits to make sure they get good results. Whereas boys try to do bare minimum to get maximum results, right? And if you keep doing doing this over the years, what happens is, boys grow up with confidence where they think, okay, you know what? I can do this much and still get away with it, still achieve my result. And girls think, okay, this is not good enough. I need to study that 1 more hour. I need to do a little bit more, to be able to get good results. And I think it's important that parents and teachers address this. I think it is a big issue, and this is why we see the big difference in chess, in my opinion. Honestly, I think boys are born with it. Like obviously, we can differentiate people amongst boys, but
let me stop you for 1 second there, because that's where I wanted to go at some point, because as a teacher experiencing this in the schools. Now, again, this is anecdotal. This is not, I'm not talking as a scientist, but I would notice, especially in the K1 area, so you're talking about kindergarten, first grade classroom, that when the rules are taught, and it kind of fits to what you just said. So I would teach the first maybe 3 or 4 classes, even before they got to play. I did notice that the girls were very specific about making sure they understood all the rules and again, this is, I am giving you this from my own lens, I would find the boys very often after the first lesson leaning in, when are we going to play? And the next question out of my mind, well, you don't know how to play. Yes, I do. And meanwhile, they don't, but all they want to do is get their hands on the pieces. Then fast forward a little bit and actually have them sitting playing each other. We teach the kids the basic opening principles, for example, right? Use your center pawns, get your minor pieces out, take care of your king. You go to a lot of the younger girls' positions, after 10 moves, they're castled, they have their pieces out, everything is in place, and they're very often looking up, and I'm looking down going, wow, that's great. You look at the boys' positions, very often, they bring a piece out, and they try to kill you with it. And when they lose the piece, they bring the next one out, and they come after you with that one. That happened a lot. Does that fit in that little with what you're saying? The boys
Yes.
are just naturally more aggressive, or?
I think so. I mean, absolutely. Boys are naturally more aggressive, and at an early age, boys like to intimidate girls, and girls get intimidated very easily. That's why girls, I'm talking about little girls. No, I mean, they don't like, I mean, from my experience, girls don't like to play boys. And I'm talking from, a teacher's perspective, because I've seen my students don't like to play boys because they feel intimidated. I was myself, I remember growing up, I had a friend, I was better than him. I was higher rated. Nevertheless, every time I played him, I hated to play him because he always told me he would beat me when he played me. And that's exactly what happened. Every time I went to play against him, something inside me would close up because I was scared. I thought he was going to beat me, even though he was low rated. And I see that with my kids. I have a daughter and a son. They're about the same strength. I would say my daughter is a little bit better. She's older. She's been playing more. And, if I had to rate them, my daughter is higher rated. Every time they play in a chess tournament online or, in a real tournament, my son will come out of the parents board and say, Sophie, I'm playing you, I'm going to crush you. And my daughter, she gets closed up, and every time she plays him, she's biting her nails, and she loses every time, even though I think she's better. And I see that all the time. So I think this is a fascinating subject. I think that is one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of women playing chess, or a lot of women, maybe getting into male-dominated fields, because they lack confidence, and maybe also they're not praised enough. I think that's another thing. The other day I was listening to a podcast. They talk about how when baby starts to walk, they fall all the time, right? They get hurt really badly, but because they are praised constantly, what do? They get up and they keep walking, right? Now, maybe boys don't need to be praised as much because it comes naturally, right? But for girls, I think it's important to nurture them and maybe praise them more in order to push them a little bit forward and kind of, get them into this male-dominated world where they can, do as well as boys, in my opinion, as long as, we build their confidence.
Yeah, very, very good. I'll finish with just 2 things. One, comment about what it takes to play chess at some point. These kids that are really, really progressing, where you're locked in a room, and even at the highest levels, right? You're spending 6 to 8 hours of I'm talking about the pros now, 6 to 8 hours of your life, either clicking a mouse, looking at chess positions, a lot of it's done on computers, or you're moving these pieces on a board. So we'll save this for another time, and I'd love to revisit this, especially with the audience that we have here, as to, or perhaps we can get some feedback tonight in the breakout room as to, is there some difference between what will let somebody sit in a room for 6 to 8 hours studying just chess, or perhaps there is something even very young that would take somebody in a different direction? It's probably a combination. But let me finish with this, Rusa. It has been such a privilege to work with you and to know you. I've been part of your family now for so many years. Your kids know when it's dinner time because they hear the doorbell ring. They usually know it's me. And I've been so accustomed to Georgian cuisine and gotten to know the culture. And there's so much more we could talk about, but I really, really wanted to thank you for spending time with us tonight. I just love the conversation. Thank you very much.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. And it has been really nice working with you too, Mike. Yeah. You're a really good friend.
Real pleasure.
Wonderful. All right. So now, folks, what we're going to do, give me just a second. I'm going to remove the spotlight. We're going to go back to the speaker mode. Give me just a second here. All right. Give me just a second. Hold on. All right. So, Rusa, I have a few questions for you, and then we're going to do the breakout rooms. And in the folks in the breakout rooms, one of the breakout rooms is going to be led by Mike, the other by Rusa. So you get to talk to them close and personal. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do the question and answers. And as always, we're going to take all your questions together. Now, the good thing is that you get to ask questions to Mike and Rusa in the breakout rooms too. But then you come back and let's get all the best questions together. And then we will go through all of them. I'll organize all of them and we'll go through all of them. So I'm going to keep it very brief because I want to give enough time for everybody to ask you questions, but I can't resist asking you two questions. So first one is about growth of a chess player at the highest level. You not only have done this yourself, but as a chess teacher, you've watched other people go through it. So what is the progression like? Are there stages where you grow, then you kind of stagnate? Are there aha moments? Are there spurts? What does a growth path of a really high level chess player look like?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And as you mentioned, Shrikant, there is really, I don't think I know any chess player that went straight up, in a linear fashion, right? Everybody stagnates and comes down quite often, right? So if you look at anyone's rating chart, because rating is a good indicator of how chess player is doing, you always see, going up and then going down or going, being flat for a while. So I would say it definitely breaks in stages. In the beginning, it's very straightforward. I think one of the most important things at any stage is playing a lot of chess games and going over your losses. I would say, if I had to talk about one most important thing in your growth, would be going over your losses, because we make a lot of mistakes. And if we don't fix those mistakes, we will repeat them over and over again. And I'm sure we've done this in life as well, not only in chess. And that's the most painful one, the one that a lot of people don't like to do. I think that's why people stagnate sometimes, in their chess growth, because they just simply don't like to go over their losses. Wins, on the other hand, they would love to show you many times, right? But not the losses. And I am actually guilty of that myself, so I think that's very important. Being able to concentrate, and we talk about this quite often, right? Like if you're not able to concentrate for an extended period of time without any distractions, you cannot grow as a chess player. Right. So I think that's crucial, right? And ability to calculate, I can't stress that enough. I think the reason why I achieved whatever I have achieved in chess is because of the ability to calculate. I actually have a funny story, because a lot of people will ask me, is it openings? Is it middle games? What is it that you really need to study to become a master? And I always tell them, you need to do tactics. You need to know how to calculate. If you are able to out-calculate your opponent, you will do well. And of course, you need to know openings as well. And, better you get, if you reach to 2000 level, you need to study a little bit more openings. If you become a master, you need to study even more openings, because you might not even get into the middle game if you're not able to get out of the opening, right? Because nowadays with technology, openings are studied left and right. You need to know what you're doing. But I would say it's still the tactics and ability to calculate what drives the growth. I think that's really the key.
Let me ask you a question on this, because many people will not understand what you mean by calculate. What do you mean by calculate?
So what I mean by calculating is doing chess puzzles. So if you're a beginner, right, you can get puzzles that say checkmate in one move. So you set up a position and you find a way to checkmate your opponent's king in one move. Once you get really familiar with that pattern, then you can move to checkmating two, and so on. And not only checkmates, there's so many different type of puzzles where you need to find a way to trap your opponent's piece, or you need to find a way to, win a piece in a couple of moves, right? Or there's some endgame positions that you need to find a way to promote your pawn into a queen. Now, what happens is when you constantly do these tactics, somebody once asked me, well, I will never see this exact position in my game because positions don't really repeat that often. That is true, but patterns repeat all the time. So when you learn these patterns, there is no way it's going to pop up in your game and you'll be like, wait a minute, this position looks familiar. Like this pattern, I know what to do here. And it's just going to be pretty clear what you need to do. So it gets to pattern recognition. So solving puzzles like math problems, right? Like, and you gotta, do them all the time. My dad used to joke, like in Georgia, we love sunflowers, and we eat sunflowers all the time, like crazy amounts. So my dad used to tell me, you need to do these chess puzzles like you eat sunflower seeds,
Wonderful. Last question. The second question is about community. Chess actually creates a community because it's the common language, it's the common love, it's the common thinking, which is not really part of rest of the culture around you, but that's a community which is across multiple cultures because you have a common value, common knowledge, common interest. Can you talk a little bit about the chess community?
Oh, absolutely. And chess community is really tight. And then, as I mentioned before, chess is like a language, to everybody that plays chess.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. You were right in saying that Mike speaks 7 languages because he did not count chess.
That is so true.
He said only 6. Yeah.
Absolutely. So chess is definitely a language, and that's what I love most about chess, that it creates the community, right? One of my favorite pictures that I own is my dad, who's actually 82, coming to the US and playing versus my student who was about 10 at the time, right? My dad didn't really speak English. My student didn't speak Georgian. They played a really good chess game and they were able to go over it without really knowing the language of each other, right? So I think that's fascinating. Fred, who's actually our guest today, he's an eye surgeon. And he's a great chess player, right? So, he loves the game and, it has created a community. He has become a dear friend to me, right? And we have shared this love of chess that, creates friendships that last lifetime. As I mentioned, even if you don't see a person for 20 years, you sit down, play a chess game, and all those years just fly by. It's like, the first day you met them, right? You just, all the memories come back. So, and it's very important to have a good community. As you mentioned, it's important to have a support. If there is a lot of girls stop playing chess because there's no community for them. If their friends don't play chess, they don't want to play chess, right? Because there are only boys in chess, right? So they don't feel like they have the community where they feel safe and comfortable to continue the game. So I think it's really important to.
All right, Rosa, I can't resist one more question.
Okay.
I'd kind of shortlisted it, but I think I really want to ask you this question, because what happens is that chess is an art. It's kind of your full expression. You love it so much. You spend so much time. How is it that a character of a person is reflected in chess and vice versa? So what is it about? Because, I look at different players, their style of thinking, style of playing, how they develop their entire skill over lifetime. So what relationship do you see between character and chess?
Oh, no, that's a great question. You definitely see a big relationship there. So in general, we divide chess players, roughly, we divide them into attacking players and more positional players, right? So attacking players would be people that are, I don't want to use word aggressive, but, people that like to, make that first big move and go forward and take challenges, right? Positional players, on the other hand, like to, maneuver around and kind of wait for you to make that first move. They like to study you carefully and try to understand what you are going to do and then find a way to, beat you, right? Now, I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. I admire the game greatly. And let's talk about two best players of this planet, Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov, right? They were both world champions. Kasparov, very tactical, very aggressive. Anatoly Karpov, very positional. I have seen so many of their games and said, wow, this is absolutely beautiful what they've done. So, it's hard to say for me that one is better than the other, although I have to admit I'm more of an attacking player. I like to start the fight on the board and I like to push forward, but I also greatly admire people that can actually be more patient and wait for their opponent to make that first step. And, it's funny you brought this up because I remember teaching a kid once, and then I had a conversation with his mom and I realized his chess game and the way he was playing his game told me so much about his personality. We would play and he would constantly get into time trouble. And, it was so hard for him to make the decision because in chess, you have choices constantly and so many of them, right? And it's so hard to pick the one that you need to play. Like, how do you know which one is the right move, right? And turns out the kid had the same problem in life. His mother said, oh, he can never make the decision, whether it's dinner, whether it's, eating, picking clothes, right? And you realize, oh my gosh, this kid is learning beautiful skills through chess because, he's forced to make a move. He's forced to make a decision every time he plays. And often he's forced to do it under time trouble because, as you know, chess players, we play with the clock. And if you run out of time, you lose. So when clock is ticking, you have no choice. You have to make that move. So that's another great skill that people learn through chess, decision making.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rusa. So now it's time for breakout rooms. Mike, do you have any kind of instructions for the breakout rooms? One breakout room, it's going to be, Rusa is going to be in one breakout room. You're going to be in the other breakout room. Go ahead.
I would love to hear some initial feedback. Well, first of all, whatever it is that you picked out that you wanted to talk about in the room, but I'm really interested in what we closed with. I'd love to know what people think about, just in general, about why there is such a division, even at young ages, between boys and girls in chess. That's something that I'm definitely interested in hearing some feedback on. And then anything goes other than that would.
Sure. So folks, feel free to ask any question that you have in addition to this topic. The rules in the breakout rooms remain the same. Keep on topic, be brief, speak your mind, and be courteous. And we will come back here in about 25 minutes. 25 minutes, is that okay, Mike?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Shrikant, before we go, one of our older students who actually made master is here today. And I don't know whether Rusa or it's a surprise, Rusa. I had no idea that I invited him. He's here and he actually made master. I'm curious to see which one of us is going to get him in the breakout room.
All right. So let's find out. And folks, when you come back with the best question that you have on your mind. And then we're going to do a lightning round of questions, starting the breakout rooms now. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. All right. So it's time for the lightning round of questions. If you'd like to put your questions, post the best question that you have. Go ahead and type exclamation mark. If you would like to share your question, if you would like to put a question on the table, I got to ask 3 questions. So go ahead and ask your questions. This is the time. We'll collect all the questions and then we will have Rusa and Mike answer all of them. All right, so we're going to start with Joe, followed by Jyoti. Jays have it. Joe, go ahead.
So, I mean, I was fortunate enough to have Ruth in our breakout room. And again, I want to thank her for joining us this evening and sharing her story, her acts of courage, because those are actually really important for all of us to hear. But one of the things that actually I was thinking about is the use of tactics and when you're playing. And at what point is it no longer about tactics? And I've asked this to Mike in the past, but I would like to hear Rusa's explanation to this. But what point is it no longer about tactics? And is it more about the individual that you're actually playing, the level of the individual that you're actually playing? So are you playing, and are you playing the player, or are you playing your game? And like, do you have to adjust those two? And if you're playing a grandmaster, if you're playing somebody in the top 10, does that change how you behave? So, or your approach?
Wonderful, fantastic question. Do you play your game or do you play the person? Next up is going to be Jyoti, followed by Maritza. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark to put your question on the table. Jyoti.
Yeah, hi, Rusa. I'll repeat again. I'm very impressed with you. My question is, there's a fine line between overconfidence and underconfidence. How do you cultivate just the balance, concentration, and confidence?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful question. How do you have the optimal confidence, enough humility to learn, at the same time having confidence to execute? Thank you. Next up is Maritza. Maritza, can't hear you. There is some problem with your mic. Go ahead. Nope, nope. How about you type the question in? I'll go to Ray. Ray, go ahead. What's your question? Ray, you have unmuted. Do you have a question?
Almost more of a comment than a question. I was wondering if Rusa thought that Mike brought up the statistical difference between girls and boys. And I wonder just how much of it is parents raising boys to be more competitive. I mean, is that something inborn, that boys are just more competitive in general, or is it just a learned response to parenting?
Wonderful. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Or is it something else? Culture, maybe. Thank you. Let's see. Maritza, do you have your mic? Can you say something? Nope, nope. Okay, you can type in your question. Next up is Joe. Joe, go ahead.
No, actually, I think you captured it. One of the things I was thinking about, in the sense that some cultures are male dominated versus, some are not as male dominated. And if that's the reason as to why the numbers are so skewed in the gender gap. But
wonderful. Next question is by Lloyd. Lloyd, what's your question?
Let's see. My natural style is kind of laid back, but I've had some success in chess with conscious, calculated aggression, putting opponents on their heels and not giving them a chance to mount an attack. What truth is there to that strategy?
Okay, the strategy of how do you put it very nicely, but I think we have enough.
Conscious, calculated aggression.
Okay, conscious, calculated aggression. Okay, excellent. All right, Marco, what's your question?
I guess like how does it feel like at a young age to like be able to play like 5 games at once, or like be able to visualize the board?
Oh, wonderful. How does it feel to be a chess prodigy? Very good. Let's see here. How does, Maritza asks, how does one unlearn something in chess and use it as a tool for living? Very nice. Role of unlearning in chess. All right, so we got We got amazing questions. Ambika, what's your question?
Okay, so so many people seem to be concerned about gender parity in everything. And my question is, there will be some situations when one is more than the other. Look at oil men and oil rigging. So why does it have to be that everybody has to be doing the same thing?
Okay, very good.
Because it's
Why?
not necessarily, yeah, it's because if you really want to do it, you do it. We are in those times.
Okay, okay. Yeah, you have to put it as a question, Ambika.
No,
Very good.
Yeah, sab ekdam mein.
Why does it have to be equal?
Yeah.
Very good. Next up, let me see. Jeff. Jeff, what's your question?
What are you looking for, or what is the mindset where you're trying to discover the strategy of the other person?
Wonderful. Mindset, discovering strategy of the other person. All right. Okay. Rusa. So we got some amazing questions here. Let's first plan on the time. Do you have a hard deadline?
No.
Okay, very good. So let's start with the questions. You can take your time to answer. These are just amazing questions. So first one, do you play your game or do you play the person?
That's a great question. You have to play you have to do your best. You can't really adjust depending on your opponent. Meaning you can prepare for the opponent. What do I mean by that? So as a chess player, you go over the games of your opponent and realize, oh, these are their strengths and these are their weaknesses. So maybe I can get into the position where they're not the best. Oh, you know what? Their end game is not so good, or their middle game calculation is not so good. So you try to steer the game towards that part where you feel their weakness is. However, you cannot change the style that you have. What I mean by that is, if I'm a tactical attacking chess player, I cannot all of a sudden come in and start playing very positional chess. It's just not going to work. And I have tried. Trust me, I've tried many different ways. It never worked. If I'm not myself and if I'm not putting my best foot forward and playing my game, I'm not able to succeed.
Wonderful. Mike, anytime you want to add something, you're welcome to jump in.
I certainly will.
Okay. Next question is about confidence. What is the difference between being overconfident, underconfident, just the right confidence? How do you think of that?
That's a very good question. And I'm not quite sure I have the answer to that question. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I know a lot of you may think that, I seem like a pretty confident person, but there are times where I feel like, I'm not confident at all. And I try to look for confidence and ways to, push myself up and forward. I think it's just a process. You have to figure it out in a process. And we did talk about this a little bit in the breakout room, where it's very dangerous in chess if you become overconfident. For example, a simple example would be you're playing in a chess tournament, you look at your next opponent and you say, they're 100 points lower than me. It's going to be an easy game. Now I come into the game feeling that I'm better, I'm superior, I'm going to beat them, I'm overconfident, and I'm not able to perform well. And complete opposite, you look at the rating, you say, oh, you know what, they're really bad, or they're really good. They're like 200 points higher than me, oh, they're going to crush me, right? Then you come underconfident, you're not able to do your best. So I think it's so important to find the balance. And often, I think it's important to not even look at the rating. In order to do your best, sometimes it's important to forget who's sitting in front of you and not necessarily play the opponent that's sitting in front of you, but play the pieces that are moving, right? So that's, I think, is very important. And that's how you find the right amount of confidence, when you just try to do your best, no matter who's sitting in front of you.
Wonderful. Next one is about you. What does it feel like to be this good at chess this early? What did it feel like as a kid?
You talking to me, Shrikant? Oh, sorry, never mind. Go ahead, Bruce. You can take this.
Anybody who thinks that question applies to them is welcome to answer.
Go ahead, Bruce.
You know what? I'm not quite sure I even thought that I was that good, to be honest with you. You know, as I said, I grew up with parents that are really involved, but also always wanted more of me. And, you know, they always wanted me to do better, right? So if I won a tournament, they wanted me to win the next one. And if I got the title, they wanted me to get the next title. So I didn't really grow up with the feeling that I was really good at chess. It was probably the opposite, you know, thinking that maybe I was not as good. And sometimes, you know, even now, I quite often doubt myself. But, you know, I think through the life and hard work and achievement, you know, I come to realization that, you know, sometimes you have to pat yourself on the back and say, you know what, you've done good, you know, and you can do more. Because if you don't believe you can be a winner, you will never be a winner. So I try to remind myself quite often that I need to be a little bit more confident.
Wonderful. Next question is, what is the role of unlearning in chess?
I think it's very hard to unlearn. I'll give you a simple example. You know, I think it's very important to learn things the right way. And I remember I had a skiing instructor once. I'm a beginner skier, and I took a lesson. And when we were talking, going up the lift, he said to me, well, I told him, oh, you know, all it takes is practice. And he said, well, not really. All it takes is right practice, correct practice. Because if you're practicing it wrong, every time you come down the mountain, you are just reinforcing the wrong way to, you know, come down. And same in chess, you know, if you start learning rules or strategies, they're not really good. If your teacher is somebody who is just a beginner, they will teach you things that are not true, right? And then it will be very hard to unlearn those. So I think it's much harder to learn. And once you learn it the right way, you can't really unlearn it. I think it stays with you throughout your whole life, but you can definitely use those skills in other areas. And I have mentioned in the breakout room that one thing that has helped me is ability to concentrate under time trouble. And simple example is like, let's say, you know, I'm on a trading desk, and if trade comes in, you know, market is moving all the time. So often I have to make a decision pretty quickly. You know, I've had times where, you know, it's a big trade, you know, or am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do that? I don't have time to think about that stuff. You know, I have to think on my feet and make the decision right there. And I think chess and the ability to, you know, calculate and concentrate under time trouble when I only have seconds left has helped me do the same in life when need be.
Wonderful. Next question. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'd like to ask this. I was intrigued when Maritza wrote the question. So one thing, Maritza, that I think you can unlearn from chess and use as a tool for living, to answer the question, is you will find out in a hurry in chess that you are not your rating. So I think that big swing that we talked about early, when you win, we leave the game with such elation. That's our ego a lot of the times, saying, wow, the rating that I got or the title that I got, that's who I am. And when you lose the game, you feel so defeated and dejected. So who am I? Because my rating drops 20 points or I come in 7th place, is that really me? So I think one thing you can unlearn, and if you play enough chess, one thing that you can do is you are not the result of your daily action. If you are a musician and you're performing, and that particular night you do not play well, the next morning when you wake up, you are not some defeated different person. You are not your saxophone. In chess, you are not your rating. It's very hard to separate the two, but I think that's something that can be unlearned, and going forward to give yourself a break and say, you know what? I am not this number that says who I am.
Wonderful. Next question is on, how do you figure out what's going on in your opponent's mind?
That's a good question. By a lot of preparation, I think at a high level, chess players spend tremendous amount of time analyzing their opponent's games, right? To, you know, learn their weaknesses. But also sometimes, you know, by reading their face, you know, you can tell, you know, if they're happy or not happy about the position. And sometimes that can give you, you know, that little extra confidence. You know, if you look at your opponent and you realize, you know, they look occupied or concerned. Maybe there's something they don't like in the position, right? Then you can try to, push yourself and say, oh, there might be something going on here, that could give you a confidence that could push you forward and help you win the game. Actually, there was a true story about this guy playing chess, talking about mindset. He got into a really bad position from very early. Out of the opening, he was basically losing. So all he did was trying to defend his position. Never once he thought about winning. Why? Because from very beginning, he got into trouble. So all he's thinking, how do I get out of this trouble? How do I draw this game? How do I save this game, right? So then, he looked up and he realized, his opponent was a little concerned. And that was the first time during the game he realized, wait a minute, maybe I'm not worse anymore. Maybe I shouldn't be playing for a draw anymore. Maybe I have a little bit more. And he ended up winning the game. So it's a mental game quite often, so you need to be mentally strong and you need to be able to do it for quite a long time.
Wonderful. So now I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and then I'm going to turn the tables and I'm going to ask the audience 1 question. And I'm going to give you a heads up right now so you can think about it. The question is, what did you get from this meetup? What did you get from this meetup? Okay, that's the question I'm going to ask everybody as soon as we're done with these last 2 questions. So, question, this difference that Mike talked about between the ratings between women and men, how much of that is nature? How much of it is nurture? How much of it is culture? How do you think of this?
I think that this is a great question and fascinating subject. I think we can talk about this for hours and hours, and I would like to explore it more. I was joking the other day, I would like to do PhD on this, because I really want to find a way for girls, my students and my daughter, to be more confident. And I think a lot of it is nature, and a lot of it is nurture, because we were talking about how Judith Polgar, who is the only female that made top 10, was trained very differently from everybody else. And the way she was trained is by not playing female tournaments. From what I know, she's the only living chess player, female chess player, that was not allowed to play female tournaments. So from very beginning, she only played tournaments with boys. She probably could have become a women's world champion. Her sister did, but her sister never made top 10, but Judith did. Right. So by training her in that environment of boys, right, where they are, maybe more aggressive, right? They probably taught her to be and think the same way that they did. And also one of the female chess players from my country, Nona Gaprinashvili, she was a world champion for 15 years. She said the same. She said she grew up with, I think, 4 or 5 brothers. And she said from very beginning, she was taught to be really tough and think like a boy. And she became a grandmaster, and she became one of the best players, and she beat a lot of, male grandmasters. So I think it does matter. I believe boys are born with it, but girls can learn it by, right approach.
Wonderful. All right, so let's hear from the audience, and then we will go from there. So folks, what did you get from this meetup? What did you learn? What did you learn today? Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to share. Maritza, if your mic is not working, you can type in what you learned. We'll start with Joe. Joe, go ahead.
I mean, there's a lot that we can take away from this, specifically, some of the things that how chess relates to life, and some of the things that we talked about, the importance of calculation, how our emotions factor into our decision making. I mean, there are a number of things that, but that you could take away. But I think the thing that I'm taking away is that the triumph and overcoming that Rusa had done in her life, to lose a parent, to go through living in Georgia, to come to a new country, to go from to playing chess from community college to Columbia, to a trading desk. To do that at her age is it's a story that it's inspiring to the rest of us that maybe didn't have all those challenges. We have our own challenges, but we didn't. But most of us don't. So it's one of overcoming, perseverance, and the importance of play in that process. The importance of just actually, playing the game of chess to as an outlet, and then transferring those skills into every other part of your life. And who knows, as she mentioned already, well, you're everything that Michael has built you up to be. That's one. But on top of that is that, maybe that she will come up with a way to get women more involved in chess. And so we also talked about the importance in our breakout room of role models. So in a way, you can be a role model for women, and hopefully you'll come back and join us at 52 Living Ideas. But that's my main takeaway.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Ray, you had unmuted. Would you like to talk about what you got from the meetup?
Yeah. Joe actually just kind of stole my thunder. I know Rusa for a long time.
Thunders can be done multiple times. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I know Rusa for a long time through Mike, and I did not realize that there were so many similarities to the way Mike grew up, and by extension, I grew up. And it was, I found it very inspiring Rusa, I did not have, Mike and I obviously have discussed your life somewhat, but I didn't really know all of the travails that you faced growing up. And it's incredibly inspiring for you to have, overcome that and just move to a new country and be, attain the success that you did, and then change careers midstream. I find it incredibly inspiring.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to share what you got from it. Next up is going to be Jyoti, Frederick, and Lloyd. Jyoti, go ahead.
Rusa, I will say one thing. After watching your program here, the presentation here, I can say that you are not a nerd. I always felt that these chess players are nerds. You have a lovely personality. I mean, it reflects just in the way you speak. And you're a very motivating and very inspiring person. So you too, Mike. You're not behind. You too. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Jyoti. Next up is Fred, followed by Lloyd. Fred. Fred, you need to unmute. Frederick.
Yes, first I would like to say I thoroughly enjoyed this meeting. I enjoyed this is my second one. It's absolutely been wonderful. I thoroughly enjoy my interaction with Mike, Rusa, and chess. And I've often tried to analyze why. First of all, Rusa and Mike are, for reasons that you've all learned tonight, really role models for me. They've inspired me to success, enjoyment, etc. My thought about the meetup tonight and chess is that we've asked many wonderful questions. We've asked about what it takes to succeed at something. We've asked whether there's a difference between men and women, whether there's a community, whether we play the opponent or we play the pieces, etc. And my thought was that chess is an opportunity to answer those questions, because the game itself is so objective. You can push a button and it'll push analyze and it'll show you where you've made your mistakes. We can't necessarily do that if we look at GMAT scores or if we look at success in business. But Chess, in fact, we've talked a lot about AI recently, artificial intelligence. Chess was the paradigm to study artificial intelligence, learning, machine learning. Chess is the game that every computer nerd used to start doing that. And maybe part of the reason we love this game is that we can start to understand how all of these factors, emotional, artistic, calculating, etc., go into the winning or losing. It's sort of absolute, a chess game. And then we can bring that outside and say, can we extrapolate this to larger things? And what have we learned? And that's my thought.
Wonderful. Fred, I had a question for you, because most people take up chess very early, at a very early age. And you seem to have taken up also early, at an early age. So what was it like for you when you took it up fairly recently?
Oh, it was a wonderful experience. It was a little bit of bringing back my youth, because I wasn't a good chess player as a child. Don't get me wrong. I never played in a tournament. And it's the great equalizer. You don't have an age when you're playing chess, as I learned when I was playing that 5-year-old. So it makes you feel young.
Yes.
I told my daughter once, who's in her late 20s at the time, that I was having my chess club over for a barbecue. And she always tells the story that she expected to see a group of, middle-aged or older men and women, here. And, she came out and I was flipping burgers for 8-year-olds, and this is a true story. So I thank Rusa, I thank Mike. They're very talented people. As Mike said, he speaks, 6 languages plus chess?
7, yeah, 7.
Right. The only thing I would like to point out is that 4 of those languages only Mike speaks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Fred. Next up is Lloyd, followed by Jeff. Lloyd.
Yes, just wanted to thank Rusa and thank Mike very much. Very interesting and very, not just cold clinical stuff. So it was great. I just want to say that since I haven't studied it very much, on the surface, it does seem that there is that simple answer that chess really, this has encouraged me to think of chess as calculated aggression. So it is not surprising to me, again, on a simplistic level, that boys would be better than girls, because from the nature side, boys are naturally more aggressive. And from the nurture side, that's further enhanced and encouraged and practiced. So that aggression just gets way out ahead of girls, and chess is calculated aggression. So it does kind of make sense.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next up is Jeff. Jeff, go ahead.
So thank you for this evening. It's been fascinating and taken me into a different world here. One of the things that occurred to me as you all were having this conversation with us about really various aspects of mindset, whether it's kind of optimizing confidence or the resilience needed to recover when you think you've made a mistake, or you think that you're now the victim of a strategy that you hadn't realized was going on before. I worked my way through college as a teaching tennis pro, and coached a lot of young people when they were getting ready to play some important matches. And that one of the leaders in that day was Boris Becker, who played at Wimbledon and won, if I remember correctly, at 16 or 17, one of the youngest winners ever at Wimbledon, and then won again. He was an incredible risk taker. He would come to the net when it didn't even look like it was appropriate to come to the net. And then he would dive and roll in the grass. He'd figure it out. And they asked him, how did he convince himself to do that? How did he convince himself to take those risks? And his answer was, well, I had a talk with myself and I realized the worst thing that could happen to me today is that I'll lose a tennis match. And Mike, when you talked about the feelings of losing, and Rusa, you as well, you know, I think at some point, probably everybody has to get to that, some realization of, okay, I've lost a chess match. It's not life or death. I can recover. I can get better, and I'll win again. And I think there's a certain strength in that mindset that allows people to grow and get better. That is a very, very important thing to calculate in life. And I'll leave it there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So
Shrikant, may I just quickly
please,
comment on Jeff's
please.
Yeah, Jeff, I think you did a better job of answering Maritza's question. That's exactly what I was trying to say. You said it much, much better, that when you're winning or losing at something, it really does not define you. The sun's going to rise up tomorrow. You just carry on.
So firstly, Rusa, it's just amazing to have you here. You know, it's just incredible. So thank you so much. The thing that stands out for me is your entire story. You know, starting with Georgia as a little girl, all the difficulties, and chess kind of carrying you through. So in some ways, you put something into chess, your art, and then art actually gives you back. It gives you back the strength to keep going, to kind of remain focused at a very high level in spite of whatever. So there is this back and forth between your art. It's kind of like the idea of Pygmalion, where you are creating something, you're creating an art, and that art is actually supporting and creating you. So there is this interplay between your character development and the development of your art. What do you think?
I agree with you completely. I mean, as you mentioned, you know, I have put all my time and energy into this game. And I feel like once I moved to United States, it's been giving it back to me throughout all these years. And I forgot to mention, that's how I became a US citizen, through chess. That's how I, you know, got into best school. I got chess scholarships. I've traveled the world because of chess. I've met so many friends. I've met Mike and many wonderful chess teachers. So I feel like it will be giving me till I'm alive. And that's why, like, when people say chess, I light up, because chess, I don't differentiate myself from chess. Chess is me, it's in me, and it will always be with me.
Wonderful. Mike, did you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I have such a deep love for this game because of so many of the things that are not about the competition of chess. Being this being a comprehensivist Wednesday, that I've gotten a chance in my life to explore so many different subjects and fields, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And it's been a long ride. You know, I didn't play as a kid the way Rusa did, and just as an adult, I'm still totally fascinated by the game, and still think it is still a great way to interact with children, which is probably the most important part. So yeah, I can't say enough about the game. I just love it.
Okay, if you know, in the spirit of the fact that you always like improv, I have to do something which is a surprising thing, which is improv. So I'm going to throw some ideas at you,
Okay.
and you can talk about how it applies to chess. And Rusa, you're welcome to jump in. These are just few ideas that we have studied across our meetups. And what we do is that in this Comprehensivist Wednesdays, we try to connect ideas. So one of the ideas that we've studied is in mythology, the idea of order and chaos. How do you operate so that you don't fall too much into order or too much into chaos, but operate with 1 foot in order and 1 foot in chaos? Do you see anything like that in chess?
Every single time you start the clock and shake your opponent's hand, because hiding within those 32 pieces and 64 squares is the opportunity to create one or the other. as Rusa said before, you can be a player who is positional and who is looking to keep things in order and nice and neat, but then your opponent will play a move that is not necessarily sound, but the move is real and it's on the board and you have a limited amount of time to react. So you are literally dealing with order and chaos and your management of those two in real time. So the answer to the question is, every single time you sit down to play a game of chess, you're going to have a dance with order and chaos.
Wonderful. Rusa, you can feel free to jump in anytime. We've studied the ideas of Daniel Kahneman, the ideas of system 1 and system 2, our automatic faculties and our rational deliberate faculties. How do these two things work in chess?
I'm not familiar with the work.
Sure.
So are you trying to ask about something that might be more of an intuitive move that would
Right,
come out
right.
from
So
player?
what is it? So because what happens is that a lot of learning is about kind of training your subconscious, training your habits,
Correct.
training your, so you're building all of that, your pattern making ability. At the same time, you have the system 2, which is a very deliberate way of calculating, analyzing. How do these two functions of our consciousness work when we are playing chess?
I will jump in here, Mike,
Go ahead.
before you answer. I think one does not exist without the other. I think if you don't develop the right intuition, if you don't have the intuition, you cannot become a good chess player, because there's so many times in chess where your intuition needs to kick in because you simply don't have enough time to calculate and figure out the order, as you mentioned before, Shrikant. So I would say it's so closely interconnected that one cannot exist without the other.
Shrikant, if I could add to that quickly.
Mhm.
So I probably know Rusa's games better than she does. I've seen so many of her games. So at the concrete level, I cannot play chess at her level, but I have seen so many of her games that I knew that she was in trouble long before the game ended. Rusa, we've had many of these conversations. I used to call it drifting. I know her game so well, I would watch her drift. So if you ask me as a chess player, what is wrong with her position? I can't necessarily tell you A, B, and C. That's what's wrong. But what I can tell you is something inside me tells me her style is not matching what's on the board for her. She's in trouble.
Or my intuition is not steering me the right way.
Correct. Correct.
At these meetups, we do joint exploration of the world, where so many people come in from so many different perspectives, and we learn a lot from each other. Do you find that happening when you are playing chess within a community? Do you end up learning a lot of things from people who are playing with you or in a group?
Rusa, you want to go or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think absolutely the answer is yes, because everybody has a different work ethic, different way they approach chess. And that's why chess is so wonderful. There is really no one way to study, right? Especially nowadays with technology. I've met some people that say, you know what, I don't even read a book. I don't need a book. I have this technology, I have a computer, I can just soak in all the information and become a grandmaster without opening up a single book. And there's some other players that say, you know what, I don't need technology. I can still become a grandmaster with my books and playing tournaments and analyzing games. So you learn different perspectives, and it's hard to say which one is the optimal way, right? That's why chess is so beautiful. There's so many different ways you can achieve the right result and get to the right destination. And I think it's wonderful to explore it through chess studying.
Wonderful. We spend a lot of time studying kind of habits and how do you structure your day to kind of keep building your skill. Do you find yourself using certain, especially when you're learning chess, did you have like disciplines like during the day or in order to kind of keep building your skills on a reliable basis?
Absolutely, yes. So when I trained for tournaments, and especially as a kid, because I think whatever you learn as a kid kind of sticks with you and makes a big impact. So for example, whenever I would study for an important tournament, I would train with my coach, let's say for 2 weeks. So in the morning, we would exercise, go for a run, I think that was very, very important. Until today, I realized if I manage to exercise in the morning, it gives me an incredible energy and desire to learn and basically, explore the day. So, and then I would start studying, but I think it's important to take breaks. And that's what we did in chess, right? Like I would study for 2-3 hours, then take a break. We would play ping pong, have lunch, go for a walk, and then come back to studying. So we would break basically chess studying and exercise, incorporate exercise.
Wonderful. This is a theme that we have gone through multiple times, this kind of mind-body connection, like mind, body, emotions, all kind of working together. Wonderful. All right. So this has been amazing, Rusa. So thank you so much. And Mike, thank you so much for doing these meetups, and thank you for bringing Rusa here. Go ahead, Rusa.
Yeah,
Any closing thoughts?
Yes. So I told you before, I really thought the only two people who would join besides you would be Ray and Fred, but I'm so thankful for everybody who joined. This was amazing. Honestly, going into this, I was not sure what to expect. I have a little cold. I was not feeling well, but I'm so emotionally charged and inspired by all the questions and conversations that we had here that I really want to thank every one of you for this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. This has been amazing. I just want to tell you about the meetups that are coming up. 1 week from now, the next Comprehensivist Wednesday is going to be about ethics of learning from experience. That's what CJ is going to be doing. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a meetup where I'm going to look at Thomas Aquinas talking about one story from Gospel of John. It's called Jesus and the Woman from Samaria. And I'm going to I'm going to use a technique that I've used with my niece when she was 7-year-old, trying to read a whole history book and trying to summarize it for her so that I can tell it as a story chapter by chapter. So I'm going to try to tell the story as Aquinas would have told the story. It's going to be very interesting. So that's tomorrow. On Friday, we are going to do Bhagavad Gita. So join us for Bhagavad Gita. We are looking at Bhagavad Gita, Bible, and Tao Te Ching simultaneously. And then on Monday, we are going to go back to the Design Way and by Harold Nelson. So that's what is coming up, folks. So see you folks soon. Thank you again, Rusa, and thank you again, Mike. Really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike, for organizing, and thank you, Shrikant, for having me here.
Welcome. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.